Howdy folks, welcome to Victoria Park in Hong Kong. Today we've come along to the Hong Kong International Tennis Tournament and I've brought a total of 6 telephoto lenses we're going to compare. Now I know some of these are going to be too long for this situation, but I had access to them, so why the hell not? In total we're going to be shooting with the 70-200 2.8, the 200 f2 prime, the 100-400, the 400mm f2.8, the 500 PF, and the 600 f4. I'm guessing around 200 to 300mm is going to be a good range, but let's just have a look, see how they compare and how they will perform on the Z9. Let's see if we can find the media access. Okay, so having not shot tennis in a long time, not shot at this venue, I'm going to start with the 100-400 just to check my range and see what's going to work. I don't want to go to the 500 and find it's just way too close. So we just got set up in the media area. I was scoping out the shot with the 100-400. Looked like 300-400 was going to be good. Lucky that I actually brought the longer lenses. Turns out they just have the media split up all around the actual grandstand. And we're way the hell back in the far corner, so it'll be an interesting angle. It's basically the same kind of angle you will have if you're just a ticket holder, so maybe it's actually more useful for you guys because it's just in the bleachers. But I'm glad that I brought the 500 and 600mm finally, so let's test the range on both of them. I always forget how small the 500 PF is. That's with the FTC adapter. It's so hand-holdable. I actually only brought the monopod mount for the 400 and 600 big primes. All the others easy to do handheld and probably easy enough to get through at a competition just as a ticket holder. So this wasn't really a tennis tournament, it was an exhibition event with only 6 competitors and lots of fun and games. Basically to promote the Tennis Association and get people out for Christmas and New Year. I'll share a bunch of different images here. Note that it was shot at night. Some of them are at high ISO. At the end of the video, we're going to go through and show you some samples, give you some to download, and talk about the image quality that we were getting on these different lenses. Eeny, meeny, miny, mo. F it, I'll use the 200. Oh, yeah. I stayed for a couple of different matches in the evening and, tested out every one of the different lenses. Then I came back 2 days later, actually Christmas Day, during the daytime. And for that, I only brought along the 400mm, changed my vantage point so that I was shooting from the very end of one of the courts. And then I could shoot directly back at the players, getting a different vantage point and much more contrasty. And I had a lot more light to work with. Now, before we look at them one by one, just a reminder, if you're in the Nikon Z ecosystem, I have a complete setup guide that runs you through every camera in the system, showing you the physical layout, how to work with the camera, takes you through the entire menu system, all the way through to the Nikon Z9 and the latest firmware, showing you how to customize it for different shooting situations, when and where you might want to use different options that the cameras provide to get the best results for the kind of thing that you like to shoot. You can check that one out below. Whichever camera you have in the Z system, it will help you get the most out of it. So that was really fun. I have to say it was challenging the first place that they had us positioned for the shooting, but when I went back the next time during the day, nice different vantage point. Note on that second time I only took along the 400 and no videographer, that's why it was all GoPro footage. Now, I've actually shot with all of these lenses on multiple occasions, the ones that I actually own, which are the 500, the 100 to 400, the 200 and the 70 to 200. I've shot with extensively, tens of thousands of files, the 400 and 600, a lot. I've loaned them a lot. Thank you to Nikon Hong Kong for letting me loan them. But putting them all side by side is when you really notice quirks or any differences between them. It's, you know, I appreciate I'll get comments from the audience saying, hey, how does this versus that compare? I can't really talk about it unless I've shot them side by side because the conditions vary. Now, I just want to go through them all one by one here, and I'll show you also, I've gone through and chosen out what I think are some of the best shots from each lens. But I have to say for the tennis, and it's going to vary depending on the sport, the focal length is so important, especially if you're in a fixed position like they wanted us to be on the first day. For that, the 600 was rare that I could get a full body shot, and it was only when they were like crouched down ready to serve at the furthest corner that I could engage the TC and use it at its longest, 840 mil. And with the moving around, it really does help to have a prime. But I'll talk you through what kind of distances were working well and how I found the handling and the image quality. So this, what's the best way to do it? Let's go from big to small. So let's rearrange a little. So starting out with the biggest lens, the 600mm f4. I have to say optically it's up there with the best, but I still have to say, compared to say the 400 and the 200, even though that's via FTC, I did find the number that was slightly out of focus was higher with this one. Now, when I first tested this, I found that as well. Version 3.01 firmware definitely improved it. But if I compare the 400 to the 600, the 400 was just nailing 99.9%, whereas maybe this was 99%. So still excellent, but not at the same keeper rate. The other thing you have to keep in mind, it's only one stopper difference between these two lenses, but that does make a difference. When I was shooting at nighttime, basically whatever I set my shutter speed to, that's what my ISO also had to be when I was wide open at f4 on this guy. So when I wanted a 3,200th of a second when they were serving, it meant my ISO was at least at that. And as it got darker or when they were in a part of the court that didn't have a lot of light, sometimes I was up at 12,800. And being someone who really likes to keep my ISO lower, that affects the image quality. So you do have to think about that. The handling, I have to say for the size, I think it's really well balanced and reasonably light. But if you're shooting a full match, then you're going to want to use a monopod. On that point, the 600 and the 400 are obviously monopod lenses, but actually the 200 becomes a monopod lens because despite the size difference, it actually weighs about the same, the 400 2.8 and the 200 f2. The old ones just got so much heavy steel in there. Looking at some of the 600mm images, you'll note these are really tight. These aren't cropped. These are just what we were able to get. And here's a good example when the racket came in front of his face. The eye is not quite in focus. I don't know exactly where the focus is. I think maybe on the hand there. Whereas I got so many shots I'll show you with the 400 where their face was obstructed or whatever, and it just absolutely stayed with them. So a sublime lens, but I'm not sure if it's ideal for tennis. It's probably better suited to birds, wildlife, and things where you're going to have that extra distance. Looking at the 500, which now seems like a joke, it's so small and light. Absolutely hand holdable. I really love this lens, but again, it's an f5.6 maximum aperture, so you're going to have, you know, a stop less of light than this guy, 2 stops less of this, 3 stops less of this. It does make a difference in the kind of shots that you can expect to create. Again, I actually only had this one on in between matches because, you know, you can't just be changing and ruffling through your bag in the middle of a point. So it was when they were at the end of games that I was changing lenses. But the image quality was great, and the focus capability via FTC on the Z9, really extraordinary for, you know, a non-native lens. So if 500 is going to work for you, again, in this case, it was a little inflexible, but if 500 is going to work for you, a great option. The 400. I love this lens. People think that I'm like a Nikon shield, but as I said, this missed focus, this is incredibly heavy. I'm just sharing my honest thoughts with you. Of all of them, the ones that I don't own, this is the one that I would most consider. 400mm f2.8 gives you beautiful creamy backgrounds. Let me just bring up some of the shots here. And you're getting absolutely the best image quality that the Z system offers. Amazing autofocus. It's just great. And then you have the ability to jump out and add the TC, which gets you out to 560 f4, which is in the ballpark of this guy. You didn't have a significant loss of image quality. I found this to be a really good option. Still, you have to think about, and this is, we're gonna get to this, dig into it further, shooting sports where people are moving around quite a bit and where you might want to go from one end of the court to the other, a zoom is really, really handy. But then shooting at night, if you're using a zoom that's variable aperture or something, that is also going to impact the final image quality because you have to factor in your ISO that you're able to operate with. Next up, the 100 to 400, I have to say, in terms of versatility, the best for tennis. Unless you're sitting right on the sideline by the net where 100 could still sometimes be too long. It was great flexibility, but you have the trade-off of the aperture. The focus was absolutely up there with the best of them in terms of acquisition and accuracy, but not quite as fast as, you know, the 2.8s and the faster ones that we're about to get to. Next up, the lens that is probably my favorite, and god damn, it's heavy when you compare it to those bigger lenses that are so much lighter. The 200mm f2, taking a look at some of these shots, I actually found that this focal length worked quite well for shooting tennis. Again, it's going to depend where you're able to position yourself, but it is incredibly heavy. But for a lens that's been in production for so long, I'm blown away that via the FTC, it's able to focus as well as it does. There were basically no shots where it was missing focus, where it couldn't track and keep up with them. The speed didn't fall off. It's as good as any of the others. Maybe the 400 2.8 is resolving a little bit better. It's got a lot newer coatings and that kind of thing in there. The main downside of this one is it's a prime, but it is an f2, so of all of them, I'm able to get the fastest aperture, which means either the fastest shutter speed or the lowest ISO, which is a big plus. It's just, you know, size per pound, it's off the charts heavy. And finally, the 70 to 200 2.8. This is their latest one, the VRS lens. A great flexible lens. Yes, you only get to 200mm, but for a lot of shots, if you want the wider shot, that works fine for you. And it's focusing great, it's incredibly fast, the image quality is spectacular. I think for an all-rounder, if you are only going to buy one and you want versatility, this is really a great option, probably followed by the 100 to 400. But if you're looking for maximum image quality, I would go with the 200, the 400, or if you need the extra reach and you're going to be shooting during the daylight, so f5.6 isn't an issue, then the 500mm PF is awesome as well. Now, I know some of you are going to say, but what about the 800? What about the 400 4.5 or the f4 variants? I just can't compare every single lens in one video. So I hope that was helpful for you. I will have links to the download files below so you can check out all of them for yourself. Don't forget to check out the Nikon setup guide as well. And I'll see you guys really soon. Let me know any questions you have.